Hi, you guys. What you're about to see now is kind of like a Rapidex film criticism masterclass. Not because मैं हूँ यहाँ पे, but because of the person who's going to be joining me. लेकिन उससे पहले थोड़ा सा बैकग्राउंड. हेलो, वेलकम बैक टू माय यूट्यूब चैनल. अगर सब्सक्राइब नहीं किया तो कर लो, फ्री में बहुत सारा कंटेंट यहाँ पे मिल रहा है. सेकेंडली, 2020 ये साल पूरा कैंसिल हो चुका है, तो हम फिल्म क्रिटिक्स के लिए जो फिल्म फेस्टिवल्स इतने जरूरी हुआ करते थे उनका तो कोई चारा ही नहीं है. Tribeca Enterprises and YouTube have found a way to go around this problem and they've come together to create for you a one of a kind digital film festival जिसका नाम है VR1. इसमें इन्होंने 21 फिल्म फेस्टिवल चुने हैं पूरी दुनिया से, जो एक बहुत छोटा नंबर है क्योंकि हजारों की तादाद में फेस्टिवल्स होते हैं. तो इस 21 की लिस्ट में आना इज अ वेरी बिग अचीवमेंट, और ये अचीवमेंट प्राप्त कर ली है मामी ने. द मुंबई फिल्म फेस्टिवल, जो हम इंडिया के फिल्म क्रिटिक्स के लिए एक रिलीजियस जगह से कम नहीं है. नाउ मुंबई फिल्म फेस्टिवल हैज क्यूरेटेड 4 फिल्म्स, 2 फीचर्स हैं और 2 शॉर्ट फिल्म्स हैं. और इन चारों के बारे में अभी बात करने के लिए द फिल्म क्रिटिक आई वाज टॉकिंग टू यू अबाउट, जिनसे मैंने तो बहुत कुछ ही सीखा है. मामी में हर साल यंग क्रिटिक्स लैब में बहुत सारे स्टूडेंट्स भी इनसे बहुत कुछ सीखते हैं. ही राइट्स फॉर द गार्डियन, फॉर द टेलीग्राफ, रीडर्स डाइजेस्ट. थैंक यू टुडे फॉर जॉइनिंग मी, माइक McCahill.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you? Where are you? How's it going?
I'm in a place called Warwick in the UK, and yeah, we're sort of now 8 weeks into lockdown here, and I haven't gone completely insane. I think I realised sort of about 2 weeks in that being a writer, you know, it's not good for many things, but it's quite good schooling in the art of solitude. You know how to sort of, I'm used to sort of sitting around the house doing not very much at all. So
yeah, see, I'm not used to it. I'm not. I'm used to like going out and like doing things and making videos and like shooting and things like that. And I have a feeling that I'm going to be so used to being in my apartment. By the end of it, getting out is going to be a challenge, and I don't know what I'm going to do with myself after this is over.
I know. I miss gelato. I miss triple cooked chips. I miss people very bad. You know, not necessarily in that order, but there are a lot of things I miss. But you know, we're coming together. We're getting stuff done, and we're watching movies, which is the important thing, I guess.
Speaking of people coming together and watching movies, today we are gathered here, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about this film festival, which is one of like the first innovation of its kind. It's called the VR1 Global Film Festival, and it's brought to you by Tribeca Enterprises and YouTube. It's on YouTube right now. And why Mike and I are here today talking about this festival is because we are both associated in various ways with the MAMI Film Festival, the Mumbai Film Festival, which we're so proud of. Now, Mike, you've been a mentor at the Young Critics Lab for 2 years now at MAMI?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, 2 excellent years with incredibly enthusiastic students who come along and somehow try not to learn all my bad habits. But they've been a great bunch, yeah.
Now, the 4 films that MAMI has curated, and specifically Smriti Kiran from MAMI has curated for this global film festival that Tribeca and YouTube are bringing to you. We're talking about those 4 films, and let's start off with the film that everybody's talking about, Mike, Eeb Allay Ooo by Pratik Vats. Eeb Allay Ooo was also picked by the students at Young Critics Lab last year. For which award did it win?
Oh man, they loved it. It won the Young Critics Award. They voted for themselves. They had to make cases for the various films in competition, and this was one that people really did rally around. And it's a genuine crowd pleaser. I mean, I saw it on a screener, I think, because I was hosting the Q&A for one of the screenings at MAMI. But then I went and sat in on the public screening and sat there with an audience who were just rolling in the aisles with laughter. It starts out as a comedy. You know, a young man is recruited to keep these cheeky monkeys away from government properties, you know, who've been eating the flag and generally making a gazelle nuisance. And it starts off in that way. And the audience were loving it and laughing and responding exactly the way you'd hope a festival crowd would respond to your film. And then when we came to the Q&A afterwards, they were asking really intelligent points that the film was itself making about society. How do we treat men versus how do we treat creatures, monkeys? You know, are we treating each other better than we are treating animals? And so it's like the laughter opened people up to the big points that the film had to make. Albeit in a very sort of quiet. It's not a messagey movie necessarily. It feels organic. It feels sort of dramatic. But that laughter does help to get people in mood to sort of think about what the film's actually saying underneath the cutaways to monkeys wiggling their behinds and thumbing their noses, as you know, as happens in the first half of the film.
Everybody's wiggling their behinds and thumbing their noses in most Hindi films that come out here in Mumbai. So this was, to see actual monkeys do that, that made sense. For anybody who's confused what the title of the film is, it's Eeb Allay Ooo. It is not a new language. It is very much in Hindi, this film. If you do not speak Hindi, there's English subtitles for you to read and understand. Eeb Allay Ooo is the story of this one man in Delhi who's a migrant worker. He's moved to Delhi looking for work. And he gets recruited by an agency that's been contracted by the government to get rid of the monkeys that have infiltrated the city. And what these men do, because the animal rights activists will not let people hire actual langurs, these men make these sounds. Eeb, 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 allay, 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 ooh, ooh, ooh. They make these sounds to scare the monkeys away. And it is the story of this one man who's been hired to do this bizarre job that you wouldn't think is real, but it's very much real. I grew up in Delhi. I've seen this happen. And the first thing about me, Mike, when I watched this film, because I know all these places, I know these landmarks, I know these localities and these neighborhoods, was that to see this through the eyes of a migrant worker, it just really hit me like a sucker punch, especially right now with everything that the world and India in particular is going through. It reminds you why cinema is important, because it sensitizes you to a side of things that is there, but you've never really paid attention to. And the filmmaker's gaze makes that possible for you to empathize with and understand, right? Have you been to Delhi? Have you seen the city yourself?
I've not, no, I haven't, but I did get that feel from certainly the first half of the film that I was sort of being shown around. And so, you know, within 20, 30 minutes, I kind of knew where I was and knew what the story. I mean, the reference point for me when I was watching it was Ken Loach, the great British director who has done in the past films that, again, start out as very approachable, funny comedies about working class people, but subtly reveal that actually it's a film about something else, that it has points to make about society and how we relate to one another. So, you know, I was thinking about films like Raining Stones or The Navigators or Looking for Eric, those Ken Loach comedies that, you know, are lapped up by big audiences. It's not by any means a small festival film. This is a crowd-pleasing film. But it does have a way of, you know, for every laugh, it does sort of hit you over the head with a point about the way society has been set up and how we're all living within that.
I'm not going to lie, it took me a couple of minutes to really understand the parallel director Pratik Vats was drawing with the monkeys at the government buildings, and also saying that there's also monkeys inside the government buildings running the country. Was that clear to you right away? Because it took me a while to understand that.
Well, I think we have more to worry inside our government buildings right now than the monkeys. I think, you know, less than fantastic beasts are out there at the moment. And yeah, so it's really encouraging to see a film that is addressing those big issues, but in a very accessible, very populist kind of way.
Let's talk about the cinematography of the film, Mike, because it feels like initially you're watching a documentary, but then there's so many monkeys in there, and some places you feel like monkeys are actually trained monkeys because they're giving you the right reaction shots. Then it begins to feel like a mockumentary, and then you realize, no, this is actually a fiction story that somebody's written and they put. So talk to me about the cinematography of the film and how it's been shot.
Well, I think one of the things of the films that we're going to discuss this afternoon is that Indian cinema really seems to have mastered naturalism as a acting style. You know, I mean, there are no grand declamatory statements. There's no sort of sweeping romance or anything like. Life plays out as life plays out on the streets, and it's almost like filmmakers really, you know, it's not that it hasn't been there before necessarily, but it's almost like they're weaponizing naturalism as an acting style. So, you know, these films could very easily, if you walked into the middle of them, be taken as a documentary. I would say the thing here is that Pratik Vats, his editing style, the way he cuts in those response shots, it has the funniest reaction shots of any comedy I've seen in the last 10 years. You know, just the reactions to the monkeys who could not care less what our hero is doing. You know, he's waving them away, he's waving his arms, he's shouting Eeb Allay Ooo. He's holding up his, he's got an MP4 player because he hasn't quite mastered the Eeb Allay Ooo shout, so he has to record it and then try and play that together. And the monkeys could not care less. Pratik Vats is a man of very great patience. You sense that he sat there with his camera for a very long time, waiting for the exact right response for the monkeys for that particular point in the movie. And all those little cutaways pay off so brilliantly. And like I say, when I saw it with the audience, they lapped it on. They were responding exactly the right way.
I think when you first see the relationship that our protagonist is going to have with the monkeys, and you find out that he's actually really scared of the monkeys, and not just like he doesn't just not want to do this job, he's scared for his life. In the first few scenes when Pratik Vats is establishing that, I think there's one shot where the actor is actually scared of the monkey, and he falls back onto the camera, and the camera loses its position, and the camera goes like that. And it was amazing that they kept the shot in the film, like and that kind of like adds to the documentary feel of the filmmaking, like because they're inviting you in.
That's exactly the kind of the naturalism that we're talking to. That we're talking about. That this is a scene that plays out as that scene would play out in reality. And if you are scared by a monkey, you are going to stumble backwards. And if there's a camera there, so be it.
The film is commenting on immigrants, migrant labor. It is commenting on the monkey see, monkey do. Fun, very intended. Because it's such a beautiful comment on, and it's a very heartbreaking comment on how it's a very unique Indian thing. We do not encourage individualism. We encourage monkey see, monkey do in our children. We do not encourage people to be free thinkers. Somebody's gotten you a job, you don't like it, doesn't matter, do it. You will not be encouraged to go out and find another job. And which is one of the reasons why people behave like monkeys, because they're just aping each other. There's so much. The more time you spend with the film and thinking about the film, it just keeps kind of revealing its many secrets, I felt.
Yeah, I think so. I think, under that surface of comedy, a broad comedy of, man versus animal comedy, there is a hell of a lot going on. It goes into surprising territory later on. There's a bit where he comes out dressed in a full costume, like he's Hanuman or Monkey Man or, that kind of thing. And it just takes the film in a very thoughtful direction. It's not necessarily going for laughs at that point. There's a certain degree of poignancy in the fact that he's performing for crowds, and the crowds are now looking at him in the same way that the monkeys used to look at him, with the same kind of puzzled indifference. What is going on here? But it's constantly talking about the relationship we have with one another, and the relationship we have within society.
Did you know that his name Anjani, the character's name, what it means in Hindu mythology?
No, I didn't. No, tell me.
It's another name for Hanuman.
Oh, there you go. Well, that makes perfect sense. Again, it all links together. It's an incredibly smart little film.
And what I really appreciate about this film also is that it talks about dignity of labor, because the character Mahinder, the other monkey catcher who's training him, is actually a real monkey repeller, Mahinder, who's been doing it and whose story inspired Pratik Vats to make this film. And it talks of dignity of labor because he's so proud of what he does, and he loves what he does, and he loves teaching people about it, and he loves talking about it, and he's singing, dancing, making merry. So it doesn't feel exploitative that you're taking the story of these poor people and making a feature film about it. So I appreciated that about the film as well.
Yeah, and there's a very great dramatic contrast between the older monkey repeller's experiences and our hero's experiences. When he's dealing with colleagues who are pushing him into a monkey cage and forcing him to eat banana. There's a direct contrast between those kind of experiences. And again, it's about the ways we work nowadays and what we're prepared to accept at work and what we're not prepared to accept at work.
One question that I'm going to keep standard through the 4 films that we're talking about, this is the last question for Eeb Allay Ooo, is the women of the film, the way the women, the female characters of the film have been portrayed. Yes, all the characters in this film are vulnerable. The brother-in-law is vulnerable because he has this rifle. That's a whole different subplot, which is amazing. But the women here are not sad. They're not to be pitied. They're actually quite strong. The sister, who's pregnant and she's unwell, but she's strong. The love interest, who's the compounder at a doctor's office, and then an actual doctor. Those are the 3 female characters, I think, that have talking parts in the film. So talk to me a little bit about what you felt about that.
Yeah, I mean, certainly in the case of the first two, they're kind of like the backbone of that particular family. When the men are out and about doing their work, those are the people keeping the home together, and there is a sense in which there is a kind of strength about those characters. And certainly, the idea of home as a kind of retreat from work. You know, you go out to work and you do this job, and it might pay particularly well, or it might not give you the dignity you want, but you've always got somewhere to come back to at the end of the day, and someone who will listen to, you know, and understand where you're coming from. And so the home life is almost as important as the work. Again, it's this contrast between home and work, and the work that isn't necessarily giving this character a particular, putting any dignity on this character, and the home that is much more welcoming and you know, a place where you can rebuild and restart, if you like.
Yeah. So you guys, by the time this video is out and you're listening to this conversation, Eeb Allay Ooo might not be on the We Are One YouTube festival thing, but the first opportunity you get to catch it on an OTT platform, and if any OTT platforms are watching this and you still haven't decided, you've got to pick this film up. It is fabulous. First opportunity you get, you guys, you have to watch Eeb Allay Ooo. The second feature film that has been selected at this festival, that was curated by MAMI, is Nasir. Now, Nasir is a Tamil film, and it is made by Critic. The one question that really I left this film with was, how do you sleep at night?
It's a very powerful piece of work. I mean, in some ways, there are connections with Eeb Allay Ooo, and we're talking about sort of naturalism as an acting style, and the fact you could walk into the middle of it and think that it was a documentary about real life on the streets. Both of these films are kind of like Trojan horse movies. I guess Eeb Allay Ooo is a Trojan ape movie, but you know, Trojan horse movie in that they start out as one thing, and you think it's going to be that kind of film, and then somewhere along the line it changes, or it reveals a different facet to its storytelling and becomes much more complex and gives you really something you can get your teeth into. And the thing about Nasir is that it starts out as this very observational slice of life, day in the life of a clerk who works in a garment store, and you think, well, okay, this is interesting, but I'm not quite sure where it's going. And then, as the film goes along, it becomes much more serious and much more troubling. And the reason that is that Aaron Karthik opens up the background of every frame. I mean, in terms of shot selection, in terms of sound mixing, and the choices that he's making with those individual shots. And it's often sort of shots of pretty everyday things. So like the radio cassette player in his room, or the pot plant in the corner. And you're sort of sitting there for the first 15 minutes going, okay, well, why am I being shown that? And you start to think, well, what is it telling me about this character? What does it tell me about his life? You know, why are we being pointed in that particular direction? But every single one of those shots says something about the main character. Yeah. And, you know, the conversations in the background of the shots, you're being pushed in a particular way. And I did think about 15 minutes in, I thought, you know what, you could show this film in film school to students, and you could teach it as a model of directorial precision, a director who's absolutely in control of everything that passes in front of his camera, who knows the reason for those shots and is slowly revealing them to you.
Absolutely. It's one of those films where the screenplay really demands you to surrender to it. You have to trust it. You have to trust the screenplay and let it guide you. I'm not even saying that you need patience to watch this film. You won't be impatient watching this film, because it does really suck you in, but you have to surrender to it, and you have to let it work its magic. And there is so much magic. Again, it's one of those films where, without saying the obvious, there is so much that it is saying. It's like an anti-Twitter, where everybody's just like yelling and angry and like talking about all the things that they're mad about. This film is also talking about all the things that it's mad about, but it's not yelling at you. It's respecting your intelligence, and it is just showing you the reality of this man. Yeah, like you said, like this is also like Eeb Allay Ooo. It's a day in the life of, even though this is Eeb Allay Ooo was over a period of time, and this is literally, I think, a day in the life of Nasir. All the events of this film happened. I just loved this character. I just loved the way they wrote Nasir. If you have to make a checklist of what is a good man respects his wife. A good man respects his work. A good man maybe respects his God. A good man, here this person is not just a good man. He's gone one step beyond, and he's caring for a special needs child. He's caring for an older mother, and he's not complaining. He's not whining. He's not frustrated. He's not angry, because many times cinema and any television fall into the trap of showing up, because this person is laden with misfortune. This person is angry, and the anger is justified. This person is not angry. This person is just living their lives the best way they can. And yet that is where the film confuses you a little bit, that, all right, I'm seeing this man who's doing all the right things. Why? And that's when it just kind of grabs you by the collar and shows you, this is why you need to know that this man is doing all the right things. We're the ones who are stopping him from enjoying what should rightfully be his.
I think if I was going to define that character in a sentence, it would be that he's a character who doesn't know what's coming up around the corner. You know, he's living his own life. He's doing the things that he's done. And you sense that he's done those things. He's gone to work every morning for many years. You know, he said goodbye to the wife. You know, he's bought his tea at a particular spot. And yet he doesn't know what's coming up around the corner. And that's, I think, what's extraordinary about that performance is that it's a performance where the actor has to live in the moment, in that specific second, in that specific scene, and not give away anything that's coming up down the line. Because I think one of the points that Aaron Kartik makes here is that, you know, history has a horrible way of sneaking up on us. We sometimes find ourselves caught up in things that we're not expecting. And, you know, those kind of days begin with someone pottering around a house, someone putting, a tape on the cassette player and listening to that while he's having breakfast and going out to get tea. It's all those little things that sort of build up, and it's a film that works by accumulation. It's all those small but brilliantly observed details, very precisely observed details. And I'm sure, you know, there will be people watching this who sit down with it and think within the first 10 minutes, okay, this is it's operating on such a low key. Why am I being shown these things? Why am I seeing someone just sort of pottering around the house? But once you ask yourself that question, then it takes you into an interesting place, you know. And I think the precision of those images and the things you hear off camera, he has a great way of opening up. It's a very small, sort of narrow academy frame with sort of rounded corners, but he has a way of opening up that frame to give a sense of the turbulent world that's going on around this character. It's not as closed off as you first think. There is a sense of a wider world out there that's much more turbulent and unpredictable than the lead character thinks.
What makes made Nasir so amazing an achievement is because Arun Kartik, he has observed this, he has felt this, and he's showing you his observations in the most authentic ways that he can. That's why he starts with those really long shots of just an empty lane. It's just an empty lane. It's just the camera is just watching an empty lane, and you're watching with it. And then you start to notice the little observations that he has made. Like, for instance, you know, those pots, the plastic pots that they carry the water in. Now, those are so prominent in multiple shots. And you realize that these plastic pots are only limited to this side of life where people do not have running water in their home. So these plastic pots are manufactured for somebody who needs plastic and something that will not corrode over time, because they are not going to get running water for a long, long time. So they need plastic pots to carry water from the tanker to their homes. And I thought that was so amazing that they're shown so prominently, because it's an observation that Arun Kartik made of the area and how people live there.
He knows these streets. I mean, sometimes you get a sense watching a movie that the filmmaker has never been to a particular place before and is discovering it in front of you. Sometimes you obviously go and see films where filmmakers have no idea where they are, full stop. But this is an example of a film where I believe he grew up on these streets. He knows that, you know, how the lay of the land, if you like. He knows those little back alleys. He knows the best way to get into town or whatever. And it's a film that shows you that. And there's a degree of knowledge going on behind the scenes, which hooks you very early on and keeps you watching, even when you're thinking, well, why am I seeing something so sort of low key? You always sense that he knows where he's going and he knows where this story is going. And he takes you there by the hand.
In one scene when he's on a scooter and he's going from the shop to the hostel to deliver the blazers, and by that time you've kind of gotten used to this God voice, this transistor-like voice that just kind of keeps coming somebody is talking about the virtues of Allah, and this other man is talking about the virtues of a Hindu god. And while he's standing on that red light, not even paying attention to what's going on because he's so lost in the fact that he has to make a sale today, the car behind him has a sticker that says "Glory to God," which is yet another religion. He's surrounded by this various kind of communal and religious things around him without it even penetrating his mind, because he doesn't have the luxury of thinking about anything except, where am I going to make my next 1,000 rupees from?
It's a case where it's not the shape of the frame, it's what you do with it. And boy, does he stock it deep with all these details and the voices off and things like that. I mean, I don't think I've seen this year a film that packs so much into the smallest of spaces. You could look at any corner of those frames and spot something that tells you something about this guy, either this guy himself or the world in which he's living in. There's a brilliant thing where, again, he's just walking out in the morning. You see a man in the background reading a newspaper. You immediately know that that's where you'd find that guy at 6:45 every morning, sitting there reading the newspaper. There is a sense that Aaron Karthik absolutely knows that world. And when you have a director like that who is showing you, there is something inherently compelling about that. So even if there aren't exploding helicopters or gunfights breaking out, you're hooked by the fact that somebody's showing you around their town and telling you something about how that town operates, how it all connects up, and how it connects to the world.
To talk about the women in this film, again, they've not been shown in, they're not looked down upon. They are not sorry creatures. They're even the saleswoman who works at the shop with Nasir, she knows that people are probably gossiping about her. She doesn't care. She's on her phone, she's playing her games, and she's talking to her boyfriend, and she doesn't care. In one shot, you see her, and this is such a sneaky dialogue. Like, most people will not even catch it. But while the camera is kind of going around and everybody's trying to make a separate sale, she's standing in a corner and she's talking to her mother and her young daughter, trying to sell them better looking underwear at the same price. So the saleswoman doesn't have anything to gain because it's at the same price. And when the mother refuses, she just gives a sorry glance to the young girl who is hoping to buy this better looking underwear at the same price, but her mother will not let her. Now, in that, it's such a sneaky moment, and it just says so much about just female solidarity that is required in a community to survive like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's full of little character details like that, and things you glimpse in passing, and things you might not see. I mean, I do think this is one of those films that benefits from, if you've watched it once, watch it again, because you will know now where it's heading, and so everything will seem as though it's leading up to that. There will be things that you miss along the way, things tucked away in the corner of the frame, little conversations that go on. That Nasir writes a letter to his wife, or composes a letter in his head, the significance of which isn't really sort of fully revealed until the very end. And so it's full of those things that you might shrug off at the time and you might overlook. But I think if you go back and take another look at it, you'll get an entirely new perspective on this one. Because, like I say, every corner of that small academy frame is crammed with some telling detail.
So again, for Nasir also, guys, I would say I do not know if it's going to be on any OTT platforms anytime soon, but if it is the first opportunity you get, please, you have to absolutely watch this Arun Karthik film. It is in Tamil, but I'm pretty sure there will be all kinds of subtitles available for you to watch this film. So there were 2 features and 2 shorts that were selected for the festival and curated by MAMI. So let's talk about the first short, Mike. This is Awake by Atul Mongia, and this film is in Hindi and English, and it's set in Mumbai city, and it is the story of a photographer played by Ishika Mohan Motwane, making her debut as an actor. Oh my God, what a revelation. She's so good. And she's a photographer who is in a strange marital relationship, which also kind of comes as a shock. So what were your takeaways from Awake, Mike?
Well, I mean, you're looking for signs of promise in short films. You're looking for something that might be eventually develop into a feature film or career, or something a bit longer somewhere down the line, but also something that should work in and of itself. And I think both the shorts that we'll be talking about absolutely do that. I mean, I was struck by how much confidence there is already in the storytelling in these 2 short films. With a short film, even if you're not quite sure where it's going, you sometimes feel like you've been dropped in the middle of something. You want to feel as though the short has a story to tell, and it's a story worth telling. And I think with Awake, this is absolutely the case. You're dropped into the middle of a situation that's been like this for a little while, but we're heading towards a sort of a fork in the road, or, you know, a transitional moment. And so we were about to sort of experience that, the run up to that. And you sort of figure that out. And then, you know, we spoke earlier about naturalism and how naturalism is sort of suddenly in vogue for sort of independent Indian filmmaking. The naturalism of the performances sort of drills down into what's going on under the surface, or, you know, what's going on behind the scenes here. It's almost like we've learned to weaponize naturalism as some sort of, you know, like a mining instrument or something. We can dig down into these stories and bring stuff back up from under the surface. I mean, this is obviously taking place in a very different milieu from Nasir. You know, it's very much Bandra. You know, if you know Bandra, this is very Bandra. But it operates on that same principle, that you could walk into the middle of it and think, okay, well, this is normal people living their lives and sort of making tough choices and facing those big decisions in life that we all have to make. I was very impressed. I mean, I thought the performances were all terrific. I think it's brilliantly cast. You know, the old friend who now runs a clothes store, you know, with a little necklace around the neck, you know, as a little reminder of his partying days. Again, it's this attention to detail that you're looking for, and it crams a lot into that and tells a story that is complete in itself, but also sort of open-ended. You do wonder what's going to come of those characters once the final credits roll.
Yeah. Like you said, it's naturalization to such a huge extent, because you're seeing people, because Ishika Mohan Motwane, like, even though she's not playing herself, she's playing a version of herself, because she's a photographer. She's a very famous, very celebrated photographer, and she's playing a photographer, and you get so sucked into that whole space where you're like, all right, so she's a photographer. But when the twist comes, which comes really fast, which is like in the first few minutes of the film, and you realize what the relationship with her husband is, you're just like, you're taken aback, because you're expecting it to continue to be a natural day in the life of kind of storytelling and filmmaking techniques. If you had to hazard a guess, I mean, I'm not going to give away very many spoilers, but if you had to hazard a guess, what happened between the husband and wife?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are certain sort of flashbacks to their previous relationship, or the previous state of their relationship, where you know, things were obviously very different. And I was expecting actually the film to lead up to the point at which we can sort of double back to where we come in to explain the state of play as it is when we first meet those characters. And actually, to its credit, I think it, having set up that expectation, it then sort of goes around it and allows you to form your own conclusions. I watched the short last night, and I've been thinking about it ever since. That relationship, there's something so unique about it, and it's not a relationship that's often dramatized, that's often put on screen. So I think it's one of those shorts that's going to start people talking, and having sort of, you know, asking each other the same questions that you just asked me. You know, people will sort of, but that's the great joy of a short. It can often give you little fragments of life, and you have to assemble them and bring in some of your own experience and form a more complete picture that way. I mean, it's also another sign of just how confident filmmakers are now dealing with very different types of relationships. You know, it's not a conventional courtship or a romantic relationship, or, you know, it's not a sort of scenes from a marriage divorce story. This is something else entirely. And I don't think I've ever seen it sort of dramatized in this particular way, certainly not in this place. So, yeah, I mean, the people, you know, filmmakers really do seem to be looking for more adult, complex stories to tell. And that's, you know, that's exactly the kind of sign you want to see in these short films.
Because you know, in the short film, your duration is so short, and you just really kind of have to latch on to, like, what part of the human psyche are you going to explore in that limited time. And this explores a side of the human psyche which I wasn't expecting. And when you get into it and you think about it, and then it just makes you kind of want to get to know this side of the human brain and how, you know, people can function as well. Again, Awake is by Atul Mogia. It's in Hindi and English. It's a fabulous little short film. It's under 30 minutes. And if you get the opportunity to watch it, guys, check it out. All right, Mike, moving on to the last film of the day. This is by Shan Vyas. This is a film in Hindi, and it is called Natkhat, starring the woman who can do no wrong, Vidya Balan. I absolutely adore this woman. this is a new kind of space for her to be in as a producer. Natkhat, for anybody watching us, is the story very much set in India, in one of those villages that has kind of turned into a town, but it's got a lot of catching up to do. And it's the story of a young boy. It's not specified how old this kid is, but if I had to hazard a guess, I would say around 5-ish. And this kid goes to school and he has friends, and how whatever we're teaching our younger generation, not in school, but as a society and as influences on young minds, this is what the film explores. And I thought it was a very difficult watch for me, because as a woman, I just felt very helpless. Like I wanted to reach into the screen and fix things for people, because everything was broken in this family and in the system. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I did. There were several points where I sort of wanted to sort of intervene and nudge people in a different direction to the ones they were set on. I mean, again, this is the recurring theme of these Trojan horse films that set out like one thing and reveal that they're actually something else, and do something very subversive along the way. And this starts out with a couple of minutes of sort of vaguely cutesy school kid comedy, and then you realise that actually all this boyish high spirits and horseplay could actually be youthful energy that's been misdirected, that's been put that's been put in the service of very bad, very terrible behaviour, and how easily one thing leads to another. And what the film understands quite brilliantly is the level of intervention and re-education that's needed if you are going to address that if our little monsters aren't going to grow up to become big monsters, what do we need to do? And it understands that that's not just a school thing, that is something that needs to go on at home, in communities, in families. We need to be having those kind of discussions in order that we don't arrive at these local and national tragedies that we seem to be hearing about every day, every other day. I mean, it's like you say, it's a surprising film, because you think it's going to be a fairly cutesy comedy, and within minutes you realize that something very serious is at stake, not just for these characters, but for India as a whole.
What I really appreciate about Natkhat is that, like all good movies should, it calls truth to power in the form of the society that we live in, and the society that's kind of the rules that are indoctrinated. How little boys grow into young men, who grow into middle-aged men, who kind of control everything, and the changes that we need to make. And you get a third-person point of view, because these people are relatable. We know these people. These people are our family members, our extended family members, and this is how we talk to each other at home, and this is how we treat each other at home, especially young kids. Because this is such a wonderful use of this. When a child in the family says something unbecoming or unexpected or silly, like that kid says in that moment where they're talking about one woman who's becoming a problem to their business, the first thing that the elders of the family say, or are you watching too much television? You're watching too much. We need to cut down on your television watching. And then the film kind of takes you and shows you that this kid he's watching dance competitions on television. What this is, he's learning from you, and he's learning from the people in your village. And another Hindu mythology connection here is Natkhat. The title of the film means naughty, but Natkhat is also a name, a way of describing a Hindu god Krishna. And why this connection works here is because in our stories when we were growing up, Krishna was the Natkhat god who would run away with women's clothes when they were bathing in the village pond, which is a scene in the film. Yeah. You see that scene in the film. This kid runs away with the woman's, dupatta when she's sitting in the marketplace, and I thought that was pretty clever.
It's very clever. I mean, it tells a story within a story, and it's a story that changes a life, as far as we can make out. By the end, things have changed in a positive sense. And talking about strong female characters, the poor mother in this family, who is surrounded and outnumbered by these terrible men, and who becomes aware that the little prince that she's raising may actually grow up to become a psychopath, and so has to intervene. And VidyaBalan is astonishing. I think, she's produced this. This is clearly a sort of labor of love for her. It's clearly got the material's clearly got something that she connects with. But yeah, she's phenomenal.
Even though I would like to say here that I thought it got a little muddled, the screenplay when it intercuts between her narration of the bedtime story and the kid's real life as he goes out and about school and outside. I found it a little difficult to continue to draw the parallels between the bedtime story that she's telling her son and how it is mirrored in his real life.
I take your point. I think it does. The second half, it loses a little bit of its focus. I mean, I get the idea that you tell a story to someone and it changes their life, and that they respond to it. But yeah, maybe it needed a little bit more of Aaron Carthick's precision. Just to tighten up a few joints here and there's a few nuts and bolts and make sure it was tight. But yeah, I mean, the overall idea that you can tell a story to someone and it changes their lives, I think it's a very powerful one.
Lots of microaggressions in this film, especially for a female watching. There's this one scene where we meet the whole family and they are dining together. And VidyaBalan, being the daughter-in-law, she's cooking and she's serving them food and she's covered her face because that's the custom in their house. It's unfortunate. There is a spare chair at the table, and the director, Shan Vyas, I think, makes it a point to show us that chair is there. She could occupy it. She could have a place at that table. But instead, the patriarch, the father-in-law, his foot is on the chair. He's sitting spread out with his foot on the chair, where his daughter-in-law could be sitting and eating with everybody together as a family. So lots of microaggressions that women have to deal with, and we stop observing after a point. But when a director observes this and uses them as moments in their film, that is quite cool.
Yeah, very effective. And it's also a film where anybody who grew up with a ponytail is going to have some horrible flashbacks to their school days, I think. The level of detail, the fact that dad's eating this onion and it's all very sort of masculine, and the boys are sitting around and they're talking about a fight they almost got into, and then there's a small child who's looking on. I mean, it's strange. It reminded me of two films. It reminded me of Cumberlandy Nights, the big crowd pleasing hit from last year, which is again about the effect these sort of clownish, sometimes toxic men can have on the younger members of their family. But it also reminded me, strangely enough, that Brady Corbett film, The Childhood of a Leader, which is in a European context. And it's a sort of allegory about a young boy who grows up to become this terrible fascist dictator. But you can, it makes those strange connections that we are often, something imprints on us in our youth. I mean, I guess the one good thing about being a brat when you're young is that you have time to grow out of it.
So you guys, that's the fourth film. That was Shan Vyas's Natkhat. It's a film in Hindi produced by VidyaBalan. She also stars in it, and first opportunity you get, you should watch it. And also, when I was watching Eeb Allay Ooo, and it just, in my mind, was drawing comparisons with Gully Boy, weirdly enough, of this boy who is stuck in a job that he doesn't want to do, but unlike, he doesn't have any rap battles that he wins and gets out of this.
Maybe he should have rapped with the monkey. Then maybe the rapping would have scared the monkeys off. Who knows?
Pratik Vats makes it such a point to tell us that he has no talent, he has no skill. Over and over again, we are told that he has no skill, and this is systemic. This is poverty that people cannot get out of because our system is corrupted. It's corrupted at the soul of it. So yeah, that was that, you guys. Mike, thank you so much for doing this with me. I had such a fun time.
Thank you for having me. It's been a joy speaking with you, as always.
Yay, fun times, you guys. So this was, MAMI's selection for the Tribeca and YouTube coming together and making this Global Film Festival available to you on the internet. My name is Sucharita. This is Mike McCahill. Look him up, follow him on Twitter. He's amazing and very funny. And subscribe to my YouTube channel, I guess. Bye, Mike.
Bye.